Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kim Mooney, president of Franklin Pierce University, and on behalf of the entire community, I welcome you to this evening's Rindge Candidates Forum. Thank you very much to the sponsors of this event, the Peterborough Plus unit of the League of Women Voters, the Monadnock Ledger Transcript, and Franklin Pierce University's Marlin Fitzwater Center for Communication. Thank you as well, Dr. Christina Cliff from our Political Science program for serving as moderator this evening. So I'm pleased that Franklin Pierce University is host to this important pre-election event, as it meets one of the obligations of higher education, to support civic engagement in our democracy. The role of a college or university is not to push a political agenda or to claim political positions or to tell people for whom to vote. The role of a college or university is to ensure that the education it offers through events like this evening's and across its curriculum is sufficiently broad, diverse, and deep, so students and others emerge from the opportunities as informed citizens willing and able to contribute to the health of our democracy and to the political processes that undergird it. So thank you, candidates, for your willingness to serve Rindge, for your willingness to serve the state of New Hampshire, and for participating this evening as part of our educational and democratic process. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, President Mooney and Dr. Nevius, for hosting us here tonight. I want to start by noting that some 13,000 years ago, Indokina, where we are right now, was home to thriving communities of Abenaki people. Let's honor and acknowledge these ancestral lands and waterways and the people who have stewarded Indokina throughout the generations. We also honor the 100-year-old League of Women Voters tradition of empowering voters and defending democracy. We believe in good information and open discourse. We want voters to know who is on the ballot and what they stand for, so that next Tuesday, in just 5 days, we can go into the voting booth feeling well informed. Now I'd like to welcome Professor Christina Cliff, professor at Franklin Pierce, professor of political science at Franklin Pierce, and the moderator of this evening's candidate forum. Dr. Cliff will explain the format and introduce the candidates, so let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, and thank you to the candidates, and thank you to our audience for coming out this evening. As a political science professor, it makes me very happy to see people engaged in the political process. Tonight's questions have been submitted via email and through online registration. Several themes have emerged, and we have edited them together in the interest of time. Audience members in Rindge can submit questions on an index card, and a member of the League of Women Voters will collect them. Live stream viewers can submit questions via email at the address on your screen. We will have 2 panels tonight. With us for tonight's first panel are 2 candidates for state office and 3 candidates for county offices. It is important to note that Mr. McLaughlin is running unopposed, and the others do not have opponents with us this evening. 2 of their opponents have sent statements, which we will read, and the others did not reply to our invitation. We will begin by asking each candidate in turn to make a 1-minute opening statement. For Executive Counselor Shoshana Kelly, Democrat, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for holding this forum. It's so very important. My name is Shoshana Kelly. I am running for Executive Council in District 5. I am a small business owner in Nashua. I'm an alderwoman at large, and I am a mother of 2 beautiful children, one of whom is in middle school in Nashua. I've been really proud of the work I've been able to do on the Board of Aldermen, including lowering energy costs, helping small businesses through the pandemic and beyond, and making sure our public schools have the resources they need to give students the excellent education they deserve. I want to continue that work on the Executive Council. I will fund reproductive health clinics. I will approve common sense judges and commissioners. But most importantly, I will bring the voice of the people to Concord and to the Executive Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For State Senator Melanie Levesque, Democrat.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to come here today. My name is Melanie Levesque. I am a former and hopefully future state senator for District 12. I served in the State House as a representative for 6 years on science and technology and election law. And then as a state senator, I was the chair of the Election Law Committee, championing voting registration, making it more modernized and automated, as well as passing the latest bill on rail to cost and to design commuter rail. As a legislator, we passed many important bills, passing bills on education, costing it, funding it, and bringing money back to the towns. I want to go back to the Senate because I think we have a lot of work to do. And I think that we need senators and representatives who will work with the people, work for the people, and pass good law. Thank you.
Thank you. For County Attorney, Chris McLaughlin, Democrat.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris McLaughlin. I am the current Cheshire County Attorney, and I'm running for another 2-year term. By way of background, I've been in New Hampshire quite a while. I went to Dartmouth College and graduated from there. I went to the UNH School of Law, graduated in 1988. I came to Keene in 1988 and worked as a public defender. I worked as a public defender for 4 years. I went into private practice for about 4 years, came back to the public defender's office, and then in 2006, I started working as an assistant county attorney in Cheshire County. I maintained that position until February of 2013 when I was appointed the Cheshire County Attorney, and I've held that position ever since. So in total, I have over 34 years of experience both defending and prosecuting criminal cases in Cheshire County. Thank you.
For Register of Deeds, Anna Tilton.
Hi, my name is Anna Tilton, and in today's Monadnock Ledger on page 9, amidst all of these letters to the editor, is a letter of mine explaining why I'm running for re-election. I grew up in Swansea, New Hampshire. My mother actually taught at Franklin Pierce College when it was Franklin Pierce College for a couple of years. I graduated from Monadnock, I went to UNH, and I got married and I left the state for about 10 years. I'm a boomeranger, I guess they call them, and I came back to raise my kids in Harrisville, Marlborough, and now I live in Keene. I was elected Register of Deeds in 2013, and I've basically added a lot of technology. So if you want to see your deed, you can go online, see your deed, print your deed. The office makes sure that all of the records back to 1771 are kept safe, and I'm hoping that you will re-elect me to that position. Thank you.
And for Cheshire County Sheriff Richard Pratt, Jr., Republican.
Good evening. Well, you can tell this is my first time. I was born and raised here. I'm 55 years old. I haven't lived outside of Cheshire County. When I took an oath in 1988, it was to uphold the law. I've been a police officer sworn for 35 years, currently employed for the town of Antrim on a part-time basis. I retired as Nelson Police Chief in December 31st of last year. It's very important that when you have roots in the community, you get involved. And that's what I did. My kids were raised here, brought up here, and they've gone on to be very successful. Some for Google, and some for UMass. My education started at Thayer High School, and then I went to Greenfield Community College, and then I started law enforcement in 1988. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Kuhn will now read 2 statements from candidates that could not attend this evening.
Thank you. The first statement is from Kevin Avard, running for State Senator District 12. And he writes, "Dear friends, I want to thank you all for coming out to this great event and to the hosts for inviting me. Unfortunately, I had a prior engagement booked for this same time period and was unable to make it to both events. Civil participation is a cornerstone of our democracy, and community involvement is something that we take very seriously here in New Hampshire. Serving as state senator in District 12 has been the honor of my lifetime. It has given me the opportunity to give back to my community, which has given me so much. My priorities are keeping your taxes low and stopping a state income or sales tax, keeping our economy strong, improving education, and keeping New Hampshire a safe place to live and raise a family. As chairman of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, I'm especially proud of my work to encourage more renewable energy sources in our state to bring down our energy costs. Once again, thank you all for getting involved, and I hope to earn your vote on November 8th. Kevin Avard, State Senator, District 12. And the second statement is from Sheriff Eli Rivera. Good evening. My name is Eli Rivera, and I'm running for re-election as the Cheshire County Sheriff. I first want to thank Franklin Pierce University for this candidate forum. As an alumnus of Franklin Pierce University, I have a personal connection to this fantastic institution. Unfortunately, I am unable to attend in person due to a family matter. I moved to Cheshire County, Keene, in 1989 after serving in the United States Coast Guard for 5 years. My wife, Jen, was born and raised in Keene, and our children, all adults who attended Keene Public School and went on to college, are very successful young individuals. I am running for my 6th term as sheriff and have served as the sheriff for Cheshire County for the past 10 years. I retired from the Keene Police Department as a shift commander after serving 22 years as a full-time officer. My message has been consistent since my first day in office: to treat everyone with dignity, compassion, and respect, regardless of why or how we interact with them. The Sheriff's Office is much more than just going out and patrolling and enforcing laws. As the Sheriff, I immerse myself in the issues our community faces, whether dealing with a nationwide shortage of police officers, issues around human rights, crime, COVID, LGBTQ+, substance misuse, or other matters that impact our community. Thank you for this opportunity, Sheriff Eli Rivera.
For this panel, we will give each candidate in turn a 4-minute block to answer 2 to 3 questions about processes and issues relevant to the office for which they are running. We'll begin with candidate for Executive Counselor, Shoshana Kelly. Ms. Kelly, what are the criteria you would use to evaluate proposals by the governor and his administration in expending taxpayer dollars and federal funds?
I had in my notes where we were going to talk about what the role does, but that's okay, because a lot of people don't know. I think that the question was the criteria I would take. I think this job is a very important job, and that the criteria is just making sure you have the time to review and be very thoughtful about it. I think there's too many state contracts to say specifically what these criteria are. I would like to make sure that contracts, whenever possible, can stay within the state, so that our taxpayer money is going to companies here in the state, and to companies that are also, very fair in terms of wages and work environment.
And maybe going along with explaining what the job does as a member of the Executive Council, how would you approach a disagreement with the governor?
That's a great question. Um, I think that disagreement is really important to the process, and I think that it's just about being able to share your side in a very even and fair way. I think that no matter who it is, whether it's another alderman or a governor, we just have to make sure we come to it in a civil way, talk through it, and oftentimes you have to agree to disagree and leave it in the chamber.
Great. What criteria would you use to vet nominees?
Well, so the Executive Council approves anything from a judge to a commissioner to a volunteer board. So again, I think the criteria is going to be specific to what the role is, but I think that experience would be really top of mind for me. I think we have some current commissioners who don't have the experience, and we're seeing that in the policy that's coming out, including the Commissioner of Education. I think for judges, I want common sense judges that have worked within that branch of law, and that they are going to, they're going to be even and fair in the way that they come through, and that they'll uphold legal precedent.
Thank you. And another part of the Executive Council's job is to evaluate requests for pardons. How would you approach a request for a pardon?
So a request for pardon is a very important job as well. I think that there's going to be a lot of history behind someone coming for a pardon. I would want to make sure that it is a fair reason that they're in front of the Executive Council, and that they're, I think that thoroughness in terms of, is this someone who this pardon makes sense for? Are they, what was the reason that they are looking for a pardon is going to be critical.
Great. What do you think the proper role of state government is?
That's a great question. I think the proper role of a government is, we're representatives of the people, and so we need to be listening to the people that we're representing, and be very fair and honest in how we vote. You are putting your trust in us to be your voice, and so our votes should be in line with the majority of the state or the people that you're representing, and I don't think that that's happening right now, and that's why I'm running.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For Melanie Levesque, people look to government to solve or at least address problems they are facing. Do you see a housing crisis in our region? If so, how would you use the power of your position to address it?
Thank you for the question. I definitely see a housing issue that we have in our state, and it's happening at both ends, whether they're young people who are trying to get their first home or a place to live, or seniors that are looking to downsize but can't find a place because of the cost of real estate. One of the issues that impacts our costs of housing is our taxes, our property taxes. And most of our property taxes are spent on education. So when we take dollars away from education and put them into home schools and private schools, it takes money away from our taxpayers. So to me, I equate the property tax and the tax reduction and education as very closely tied. But getting back to housing, affordable housing is critical in our state. At the federal level, we've had our federal delegation work on the CHIPS Act. So we're going to have plants that will produce chips right here in the U.S. so that we can get people to work, that we can get products out the door. But if we can get people to work, but where will they live? So again, we have this issue that we face. Now, I don't say that I have all the answers, but I am very interested in solving this problem. And it's something that I will work on.
Thank you. Home heating fuel and electricity costs are projected to skyrocket this winter. Beyond fuel assistance programs, are there any energy policies that the New Hampshire legislature can adopt that might, in the medium to long term, reduce or at least stabilize electricity and fuel prices for New Hampshire residents?
Sure. First of all, I would like to say that I have not been in office for the past 2 years. So the increases in energy are not on me. Just want to say that. But when I was in office in the Senate in 2018 and 2020, we proposed a number of bills that would have helped us save energy. Some of those ways are using solar and more energy efficiency, and many of those bills were vetoed. I do want to say that as I was canvassing a couple weeks ago in Rindge, I met a resident and I asked him how he was feeling about the crunch right now, because I know, our electricity bills have doubled. Mine has too. And then he looked up at his garage and the solar panel, and then he told me how much money he paid for his electricity, which was like $50 or something like that. It was crazy. And then he sold money back to the grid. These are solutions that we can work on, looking at alternative forms of energy. There are benefits, there are credits, and there will be more, I believe, as they come down from the federal government.
Do you think New Hampshire should continue to set our minimum wage at the federal minimum wage level when other states in the region are raising theirs?
Well, I think we definitely need to raise the minimum wage. It should be a living wage. We have tried to do that in the past and raise the wage, and then we were taken out of office and it was lowered again. We have a problem hiring employees. They don't want to work for minimum wage, and frankly, can we blame them when they have to take care of their children? They have to pay their rent. I believe that if we raise that minimum wage, we will have people working. We will have restaurants open full time rather than closing for 3 days a week because they don't have employees. And I believe that people will continue to shop. People will buy. When people have money in their pockets, they reinvest it into the economy.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For Chris McLaughlin, County Attorney, what role does the County Attorney's Office play in addressing the opioid crisis in Cheshire County?
So for people that don't know, the Cheshire County Attorney's Office, our main obligation is the prosecution of felony-level offenses, with the exception of first- and second-degree murder, which are prosecuted by the Attorney General's Office. So our role with regard to dealing with the opioid crisis is to review cases that come in, whether it be for possession of fentanyl or sale of fentanyl, and come up with a plan for that particular defendant that we think is best for both the community and the defendant. I was part of the group that started the Cheshire County Drug Court 9.5 years ago in Cheshire County. I've sat on the drug court ever since that time. I recently gave that duty over to an assistant, figuring 9.5 years of sitting on the drug court for me personally was enough. So most people with a substance misuse disorder have had significant trauma in their past. So the goal is to hold them accountable, provide supervision through probation, get them the treatment they need, and hopefully make them productive members of society. Because the reality is that 90 to 95% of people charged with crimes in this county are going to continue to live in this county after they serve whatever amount of time they're going to serve. So if we can make them better at the end of the process, that's better for everybody.
What are your biggest concerns about crime trends in Cheshire County, and what could be done to address those?
I'm sorry, the crime what?
Oh, crime trends.
A lot of it has to do with the use of substances. I mean, people shoplift from Walmart in order to get money in order to buy substances. Our job as prosecutors is to prosecute the cases that are brought to us by the police departments. So those cases come, we review them, and then we take whatever action we think is most appropriate with regard to the particular issue. Our office doesn't really control what, the investigation of crimes or how those are solved. Our job is to prosecute the offenders once they've been arrested.
Nationally, there is an environment of diminishing trust in our institutions. What could be done to maintain trust in the Cheshire County criminal justice system?
I didn't know people mistrusted it, quite honestly. I'd like to think that I've run unopposed for the last 5 terms because people think I'm doing a good job, or it could be because nobody wants the job and the headaches. But I think Cheshire County, it's a small community. People can reach out and speak with me. They can call me up. They have my direct line. I think as a whole, there's a lot of trust in law enforcement in this community and in the way my office operates.
Great. Thank you. For Register of Deeds, Anna Tilton. What role does the Register of Deeds play in our community?
Before there was the United States, before there was the state of New Hampshire, there was a registry of deeds. Although the Indians may not have thought of ownership of property as important, the English certainly did. And when they came here, they immediately set up a land ownership recording office, which is the Registry of Deeds. The County of Cheshire was incorporated in 1769, and the Registry of Deeds office was set up, and we have records back to 1771. The state of New Hampshire, as part of the United States, certainly didn't happen until well after 1771. So the Registry of Deeds is basically a chain of ownership in our office from 1771 till today. For the most part, you can trace that property back from where you live to what it used to be. Prior to 1771, those records are at the state archives. I have a friend in Chesterfield who doesn't have a deed, never had a deed, because his family got a king's grant. The king gave out land. I didn't get any. So we're an office that makes sure that when you need a mortgage or when you want to refinance your property and you need a copy of your deed, that's what we have. The one that you have at home is a nice relic. When it hits our office, we're the official record. And I've increased the technology, as I said before, where you can go online, you can look at your deed, you can look at any deed in the county, and that's the purpose of the office, to make sure that when you need your records, we have it. In Vermont, those records were held at the town level, and it was necessarily true that the town clerk had a secure, stable place to keep records. It might have been at the town clerk's home, might have been in a town hall basement. In New Hampshire, there are 10 counties. There were 9 when Cheshire was set up, or maybe fewer. Sullivan County used to have their records in our office because there was no Sullivan County. But New Hampshire decided that those records were important enough to set up immediately a county office to hold the records. So.
What role does the Register of Deeds play in addressing identity theft and mortgage fraud?
Well, as the Register of Deeds, we don't decide what we record. We're obligated to record whatever comes into our office. We did encourage, and the legislature did pass, a fraudulent deed or fraudulent document recording statute that says if you record something that is fraudulent, you can be tried, and it's a felony. I can't tell. I have 100 documents coming in a day. I'm not going to be able to determine if it's fraudulent or not. I can, however, if somebody brings in a lien on the sheriff for $2 million, I can warn them that if it's fraudulent, I will report it to the county attorney and the attorney general's office, and they could be prosecuted. In the back, and I tried to give some of you some of this, we at our office have a free property fraud alert. What we can do is when something is recorded in our office with your name on it, you will immediately either get a text or a phone call or an email, you decide, that says something was recorded in our office with your name on it. More often than not, what that is you paid off your mortgage. Boom, it hits our office, you get a text, and then you call us in a frantic state, and we say, yes, it was recorded in our office, I had your name on it, congratulations, you paid off your mortgage. So.
Great. Thank you very much.
That's a free service.
For Sheriff Richard Pratt. What can the Sheriff's Office do to address the opioid crisis in Cheshire County?
My personal opinion, the Sheriff's Department has to assist all these small towns because we all know somebody in this room that has OD'd or died, and we keep it to ourselves because they're friends, family. So it's very important the Sheriff's Department assists these small towns to keep the local law enforcement out of them, because there's a personal thing when you touch. If you ever been to a family member that's dying, it always affects you more. It's better to have a neutral person come in so that law enforcement can remove himself.
What are your biggest concerns about crime trends in Cheshire County, and what can the Sheriff's Office do to address those?
As we all know, inflation is on the rise. So when inflation is on the rise, good people lose out because we have to protect our personal property and things. And when I took my oath in 1988, it was for life and property. As we know, fuel is on the rise very high, so people are going to be looking for that. As Mr. McLaughlin said, for drugs and opium, they're looking for that. Now they're going to be looking to heat their oil. They have the decision. Do I heat my oil? Do I feed my kids? So the Sheriff's Department has to be out there and be very visual. Visual is a big deterrent in law enforcement.
Thank you. Nationally, there is an environment of diminishing trust in our institutions. What can be done to maintain trust in the Cheshire County criminal justice system and the Sheriff's Office?
I have to agree with the attorney. I don't believe we have that in Cheshire County. I don't see it. But law enforcement is very transparent. It's open. Anybody has a question, it should be open so you can see what's going on. But I don't see that in Cheshire County. In fact, I don't see it much in that state at all. It happened in other parts of the country, and it just trickles down where we talk about it.
Okay. What is your opinion on the sheriff being a political office?
Okay. So Tuesday, we're all going to vote red and blue, right? This country is red, white, and blue. There is no political stance in law enforcement. It is very simple. And I just hope after Tuesday's election, we can all come together and be a country again and work together for the greater of everybody.
What do you see as the role of the Sheriff's Office in ensuring the safety of elections, election workers, and elected officials?
So by statute, the Sheriff's Department is in charge of transporting prisoners, court security, so they really don't get involved in that. I mean, they can. If a town needs assistance, they can send an officer there and help out and be a neutral person. I think that's... But you got to remember, this is beyond Cheshire County for election things. It's got to start in a state where we have guidance and we have laws to protect that's going on in our country.
So we'll wrap up this panel by offering each candidate 1 minute for closing statements. And we'll start with Shoshana Kelly.
Thank you. I'm running for Executive Council because I believe the people of District 5 deserve a counselor who will be thoughtful and thorough on every vote, not just defaulting to a no vote. To me, leadership is defined by your ability to listen, collaborate, and vote in accordance with your constituents. I live in Nashua now, but I grew up in Moultonborough, which is a small rural town, as a daughter of a small business owner. They taught me the value of hard work, and I will take that value to Concord. Fighting for common sense judges and commissioners, funding life-saving health care, including reproductive health care clinics, and working to create economic opportunity for all. I am a proven, experienced leader who will fight for you, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday.
Thank you. For State Senate, Melanie Levac.
Thank you again. I just want to say that I have been a very fortunate young lady who has been a representative for Hollis, Brookline, and Mason very Republican-leaning towns for 6 years, and then a state senator in this district of Rindge, which is very diverse, from Nashua at one end and Rindge to the next. I believe that the secret to my success is that I talk to everyone. I do not know any strangers, and I enjoy listening to your stories and taking them with me to the Senate as I pass law. I do want to say a word about integrity and honesty and the tone and tenor of this election especially. It's so important that we have leaders who deal in honesty. You may see signs around town that say Melanie LeBake voted for an income tax. People don't know. It's family medical leave. That is not a tax. But, you know, the signs say it all. We cannot and we should not win elections by lying to our constituents. So I am running because I believe that we can make a difference with women's reproductive rights, with voting rights, with education, and just integrity in government. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. For County Attorney, Chris McLaughlin.
Thank you. So I went to law school because I was a sociology major in college, and I didn't have many choices. I played pro hockey in Europe for a couple of years, got done with that, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do with a sociology degree? So I went to law school, and once I was in law school, I realized that the criminal justice aspect of the law was what really fascinated me. And that's why I've done what I've done for my career. I've been a public defender and a prosecutor my entire career. I love the thrill of litigation, of being in a courtroom, of trying cases, but mostly I also like to be involved with hearing victims' stories and listening to them and trying to make an outcome that's going to benefit them as well as the accused when appropriate. So I just ask you for your vote come Tuesday. Thank you.
And thank you. For Register of Deeds, Anna Tilton.
Thank you. So the Register of Deeds is an administrative office supervisory position. I have 5 professional staff people who work with me, and I get to run every 2 years for my job. There's not a lot of job security when anybody can put their name on the ballot to run against me. I don't set policy. I don't set fees. There's no politics in my office. And my only purpose in running the office is to provide good public service to the community and make sure that when they need a deed or when they need something recorded, they walk into my office and we provide that customer service. So I'm not sure what else to say, except I hope you will consider voting me for re-election. And per the Constitution, this is an elected position. It's a non-partisan position. It's on a partisan ballot, and I don't get a choice on that. I get to run every 2 years and hope I get reelected. Thank you.
Thank you. For Sheriff Richard Pratt.
As I said before, when you go into law enforcement or the military, your rules are pretty much set out for you. You don't have a choice. You follow orders, you follow the law, and that's very important as the sheriffs, that whatever law these people make, that we follow without putting our own personal opinion. And that's very important when we move forward in this country. So make sure, just be out and vote November 8th, whatever color, red, white, but it comes out red, white, and blue at the end, and we come together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the candidates for making the time to be with us at tonight's Rindge Candidates Forum. We ask that the audience remain in their seats as we take a couple of minutes to make changes on the stage and introduce our next panel. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's now welcome to the Rindge Candidates Forum the candidates for the New Hampshire House of Representatives. For State Representative for Cheshire District 14, Hannah Bissix, Democrat, John Hunt, Republican. And for State Representative for Cheshire District 18, John McCarthy, Democrat, Jeff Dickler, oh geez, I mixed them up, my bad. I knew I was going to do it. Matthew Santanastasso, Republican, Jeff Dickler, Democrat, Jim Qualey, Republican. Thank you all for being here. We'll begin by asking each candidate in turn to make a 1-minute opening statement. We'll be rotating through these, and we'll start with this with Jim Qualey for this.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Jim Qualey. I'm a current state representative representing Rindge and Fitzwilliam. Due to the redistricting process, I'm running for re-election, obviously, and I'm running to represent Rindge, Jaffrey, and Dublin. I've moved to Rindge 22 years ago. I always wanted to live in New Hampshire, and I achieved that objective, and I'm happy I did. My reasons for running for office are really threefold. One is to have the opportunity to work to protect our rights, all of our rights. Secondly, to have an opportunity to help control state financial expenditures and therefore the taxes we have to pay. And so I and all of us can afford to continue living here. And thirdly, to help keep the state within its constitutional bounds. My experience up here in New Hampshire has been very positive. I served as a selectman in Rindge, a 3-year.
Time.
Oh, I'm over?
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. I served as a selectman for a 3-year term from 2016 to 2019 and helped
time.
keep.
Sorry. Just last sentence.
Excuse me?
Just give me your last sentence.
Okay, fine. I'm hoping you'll vote for me. I'm looking forward to the opportunity
There you go.
to continue representing our interests and values of this community.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hannah Bissix.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here and tuning in. My name is Hannah Bissix. I'm a resident of Rindge, a farmer, a mother, an educator, and a founder of the South of Monadnock community. I'm standing here because a few months ago I was asked to run because nobody else would do it. John had been in office for so long, it was hard to imagine anybody else in the position. I thought about it, and I realized that that was exactly the problem. We need leaders with a new imagination. The systems we have relied on for so long are quaking before us, not just the environment, but the political and social foundations that we rely on. I knew that I needed to tell my children I did everything I could in this pivotal moment. I built a platform on what I had to offer, calling for listening and understanding as a way of building bridges so we may stop infighting and get to work. John will tell you that we should keep him in power because he's been doing it for so long.
And
he has
that's
so
time?
much influence. But my question tonight is who and what is he using that influence for? Thank you very much.
John Hunt.
Hi, I'm John Hunt, and I want to thank the university for putting on this event. It seemed a lot longer than 20 years ago that I did this when the first time I actually had a Democratic opposition. Pat Berry and I had a debate. And I think it's great that the university is carrying on the tradition of allowing us to have this conversation. I ask for your vote because of what I do for the community. I'm very involved in the community of Rindge ever since I moved here. And I also pride myself on being an excellent legislator when it comes to constituent services. I get at least a call every other month of somebody who has a problem with state government. And I assure them that they called the right person because I do have those connections and communications with all the departments and commissioners,
That's time.
and I can get the problem solved.
John McCarthy.
Okay, thank you. Hello. And thank you, John, for turning on my microphone. Appreciate it. I'm a member of the Jaffrey Rindge School Board. I have been for 6 years. Before that, I was on the Budget Advisory Committee. I care about our schools, and I think we can offer school choice in this state without doing damage to our schools. And I feel like right now we are doing damage to our schools. And the Republican candidates sitting here are all nice people, good people, as far as I know at least. And they're trying to do a good job, but I don't think they're serving us as well as they could. Our property taxes are going up, not our income taxes. We're not going to have an income tax in my lifetime, I don't believe. But our property taxes are sure going up, and some of the policies that they're following are causing that. And I guess the main reason why I'm running is because I'm concerned about our democracy. And I think there's things we can do to treat each other more decently and to bring ourselves together and to listen to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Santanastasso.
Thanks. My name is Matt Santanastasso, and it's important for me to win re-election to the State House because I understand a fundamental truth about government that a lot of people don't understand or forget, and that's government's a monopoly on force, which is okay. You know, if you have murderers and rapists out there, you know, maybe we should use force to take care of those problems. But there's some problems, like what kind of straws, what material straws should be made out of, or if people have a small quantity of marijuana. These are problems that we should not use the force, the government gun, and shove down people's throat to force them to comply with these rules. There's other ways to solve these problems. So whenever anyone says we need government to solve this problem, I just want to remind them that you're asking to use force to solve this problem, and we should look for voluntary means to do it. So I can just remind people that when I'm in the State House, what you're actually advocating for. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Dickler.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Jeff Dickler. I'm running to represent Rindge, Jaffrey, and Dublin. You want to know who I am? I'm someone who doesn't kick the can down the road. I don't like when I hear somebody say 2 + 2 is 5 and expect me to listen to that. That's nonsense. Life is too short, and this job doesn't pay enough to tolerate that. I am here because of a photograph I saw when I was 7 years old. My mom was going through a box of her mom's family's photos from Lithuania, and she held it up and she said, "This is your cousin, and your whole family is now dead because of the Nazis." So now I feel an obligation when I see things going on to step up and do something.
Time.
My last sentences. I know that there is a real concern that these expectations will be denied. We only thrive as a community when everyone works together for the common good. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now turn to a series of questions about issues facing Rindge voters. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer before we move to the next candidate. We ask that the audience hold their applause for individual responses. And for this question, we will be starting with Hannah Bissix. What do you see as the proper role of state government?
To serve the people. I think, you know, New Hampshire is endowed with a really large House with the opportunity to have a broad base of perspective from the New Hampshire community. And I think really what I'm running on is that we need to start listening and understanding through our difference. And I've been out on the campaign trail knocking on doors, and I think that we're closer together than it feels. When I really stop and I listen through the difference, I find that we can really match a lot of values. So I think the government is there to represent the people and to find the common ground that we can move forward with to get to work, because there's big problems out there. People are really suffering and in crisis. Our world is in crisis, and we need leaders to act.
Thank you. John Hunt, what do you see as the proper role of state government?
State governments, you got to have it. You got to have some administration to ensure that the citizens are well served and that laws are passed that are appropriate, are fair, reasonable, understandable, enforceable, and that we can all absolutely get together. One of the things I pride myself as being as a legislator is that I often get a bipartisan bill out of committee because I can find a solution that everybody can agree with. And yes, it's absolutely possible to do that. And I pride myself in doing that.
Thank you. Tom McCarthy, same question.
Okay, thank you. I guess having a minute to think about it, to help provide for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right, from the Constitution, to set the conditions, to create a society through the rule of law, but also by helping each other, by setting up a government that provides roads and services that we need so that we can have the pursuit of happiness and life and liberty. But I think that we're also part of a much bigger endeavor, which is that we're in the 21st century here, and there are a lot of problems. And some of those problems are going to need creative solutions. The climate challenges that we're facing, we don't really know how bad they're going to be. We do know there's a range of opinions. Some people say, well, you know, it's bad, but we can handle it. Others think that we're facing catastrophe. So we need to have responses that are going to give us or play a role as a state in leading the way towards renewables and towards doing our part for that. And I'll just finish up with that, and thank you.
Thank you. Matt Santonastasso.
The role of state government. So we establish government to protect our natural rights. These are the rights that are inalienable to us, given to us by God, and they're I like to call them negative rights. So these are rights like freedom of speech and right to bear arms and all the stuff that we enumerate in the Bill of Rights. And the thing about these rights is they are negative rights, as in they don't obligate anyone to do anything for us. So like some people think that there's a right to a living wage. Well, that obligates someone to pay you a living wage. So that would be what we call a positive right. So the state government exists as why we establish government is to protect these negative rights. You know, so we don't just have people murdering each other and pillaging in the streets. Anything else above and beyond that is just an infringement.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff Dickler.
Hi. The role of the state government is to protect its citizens, to provide a infrastructure and a structure for us all to function in, to provide for the common good for everyone. We have to have agreement so that free markets work, but they need to be controlled because we all want to get as much as we can get. And we don't necessarily think about the guy next door when we do it. And state government is there to make sure that everybody has a level playing field to work with. So that's what I see state government as for, and also to lead when it comes to things like climate change and law enforcement and schools. I think we need to lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Qualey.
Thank you. The founders laid out in the preamble of the Constitution, they laid out the reasons they were establishing the government defined by that Constitution. And I think 4 of the 6 reasons they cited are particularly relevant to state government. First, and I'm not listing these in order of importance, because they're all important. 1 was to establish justice. The 2nd was to preserve domestic tranquility. The 3rd was to promote the general welfare. And the 4th was the last of the preamble reasons, was to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. Those are the 4 I see as particularly relevant to state government. If we can succeed in doing this, then we'll have established a framework in which individuals can pursue their own diverse interests and dreams and ambitions while still respecting the rights of the other people around them. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll start with John Hunt. Home heating fuel and electricity costs are projected to skyrocket this winter. Beyond fuel assistance programming, are there any energy policies that the New Hampshire legislature can adopt that might, in the medium to long term, reduce or at least stabilize electricity and fuel prices for New Hampshire residents?
Well, I guess you put a little pickle in there because you say long term, but we have a short term problem. So I'm not sure how the two can work. Obviously, I've always said that the best thing is for all of us to do our part. And I myself do that. And I have solar collectors. I heat with wood. I do everything I can to reduce my electric consumption. And I think anybody who moved to Rindge, I think that I've seen a lot of people who've been heating with wood. And so fortunately, hopefully they will not have that high bill, the heating bill. But at the end of the day, can we, the state, control energy prices nationwide? I think I made a comment to someone the other day, and it says, well, if we had actually built Seabrook 2, we probably would have the best electric rates in the country.
Thank you. John McCarthy.
Okay, so the question is, what can we do about the cost of energy, both as a long-term and as an immediate problem? So one thing we can do is we can stop slow walking the effort to introduce renewables here in New Hampshire. That's the long-term solution. I think solar is a great idea, but as some people have said, not everybody can get solar, not everybody can afford it. But bringing the price of solar down, making it a more favorable option for people by changing the rules on net metering, that's something we can do. And we can promote renewables, and that's something that we should start working on now and do it quickly. And we should do it not only because of the energy costs, but also because we want to create good jobs and bring them to New Hampshire. And as far as an immediate solution, I think the state government has done some things already to try and provide subsidies for people with low-income heating assistance programs. I think we should double down on that. There's a lot of people who are going to be suffering with home heating oil. I use wood, I burn pellets, it's great, but there's a lot of people who don't have a pellet stove. They're stuck with what they have now, and those people deserve some help. And we can do things to help them. Instead of cutting taxes more for the business profits, we should move towards helping some of the people who need the help.
Great. Thank you. Matt Santonastasso.
I have 6 minutes for this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What can be done to address the skyrocketing costs of fuel oil, electricity in New Hampshire, both short and long term?
Sure. So one of maybe the best invention that man has come up with is money. Money is amazing. It's everything that exists is because we have economies with money. We can't barter for everything. You couldn't produce this microphone. You couldn't produce anything without it. And what money is it's actually information, right? So I like to think of ant colonies, right? So ants, how do they manage that, right? It's not the queen ant directing all of them. They actually, ant runs into another ant, like a worker ant runs into a gatherer ant, and it communicates what its status is to the ant. They communicate that. And then the ant keeps a tally in its head. After the ratio is way too far out, one way or the other, it switches roles, That's the actual pricing system. It's information. For us humans, we use price as information. So if something is expensive, we actually use less of it. The problem is people want to, mess with it. They want to artificially change the price because, they think the price should be something else or whatever, or, people can't afford it, so we need to figure out a way to lower the price. So what happens is when you subsidize fuel, right, people are going to overuse it. They're not going to appreciate what the cost is. And then what that's going to do is it's going to, we need that information. If something's supposed to be expensive, it needs to be expensive so we can act appropriately and preserve that resource. If it's cheap, we're going to waste it. That's the point of prices. So
Time.
If we can, I thought I had 6 minutes.
90 seconds.
Okay, well, let me just say the conclusion, which is we need to remove fuel subsidies, and that way we can actually treat the resource appropriately and not waste it.
Great. Thank you. Jeffrey Dickler.
Thank you. For one thing, we should be passing some laws, some rules that go after people who gouge pricing, who do price gouging. I had a discussion last summer with a guy who was selling me oil, and I said, he came and says, oh, it's $6.50 a gallon. And I said, well, wait a minute. In this other town, it's $4.95 a gallon. You're telling me it's $6.50. I said, why is that? And he said, because they'll charge what they can. Oh, really? Okay. And then we have subsidies going to the oil companies. Ever since the pandemic started, have you guys watched the price of oil? It goes like this. These people are getting incredible profits on our backs. So that's one thing. The other thing we can do to ease the cost of living, we can do this. We can stop all these passing all these taxes back down to us and doing the property. The state keeps lowering their business and taxes on the 1%, and they're passing it down to us. If we could stop getting hit with the property taxes, we might have a better cost of living, and then this wouldn't be such a big deal. And one last thing is the solar. I have solar on my house, and even though I don't get paid even up for my solar going back, my bill this month, I just got it, it's zero. Thank you very much. And everybody could have that if the state would subsidize it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Quayle.
Thank you. The problem of what we all consider excessive energy costs in this state is not a problem it's a problem that's national in scope. And I believe that it essentially originates with the current national policies, which seem to have severely discouraged the development of new natural gas and oil resources. And what can we do about it at the state level? I think we've got a couple of things. At the state level, we could do our best to encourage the transportation of these resources into this state. If we could transport it with a pipeline that would not infringe on people's property rights, which was the problem I had several years ago with the pipeline they were trying to put into New Hampshire, I think that would help the supply to the state. I agree that further development of solar photovoltaics and wind power would be good as alternate sources of energy, but we're not ready to go there yet. The sun doesn't shine all the time, the wind doesn't blow all the time. When it's 2 o'clock in the morning in February and it's minus 20 out, which I've experienced at my house, I need to know I have electricity available to stay warm. And our ways to do that right now are fossil fuels, or hopefully maybe there's some talk lately of developing much safer nuclear power. And I think those need to be explored at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah Bissix.
Yeah, this is a really big issue for us, and I really want to push back on the idea that short-term solutions and long-term solutions are contradictory. We need leaders who look both. We need leaders in the state legislature who are looking both, how do we help support people get through this winter, and how do we look at the long-term solutions? You look at the map of New England of electricity prices, and New Hampshire is an outlier. We're on 20 cents, we're down sitting on 6. And that's because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they were ready. And they made the investment to diversify their portfolio of energy resources to renewables and other resources. That's a common sense issue that I have agreement on. Republicans, Democrats, we are a self-reliant state, and the idea that we should be supporting a diverse portfolio that increases capacity and decreases consumption just makes sense. And again, and additionally, nothing is cheaper than the energy you don't use. And the thing that I've learned in this state is that the state is not working for you. The NH Saves, which is a home weatherization policy, was in crisis this year. It got saved, but at a lesser amount than it should be at. Which allows for people to do the home weatherization that's possible to decrease their consumption and allow them to be more self-reliant. People in New Hampshire don't want handouts. They want smart leadership that encourages future planning, that allows for people to be self-sustaining into the future. And I'll definitely stand for that.
Done. Thank you. This question will start with John McCarthy. A federal court is reviewing the state's divisive concepts law passed in the 2021 budget and signed into law by the governor. A ruling is expected any day. Can you give us your perspective on this law?
I'm sorry.
The divisive concepts law.
The divisive concepts law. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, it's aimed at our schools, and it's really aimed at not trying to help parents, which I think we should be trying to help parents, have an influence over what their children learn. But it's really aimed at censorship. It's aimed at making teachers afraid that if they say the wrong thing, that they could be sued, that they could possibly lose their teaching licenses. And it's kind of an anti-First Amendment law. And it's not only the teachers who are being controlled and told that they can't talk about racism or what's happening in our society with gender fluidity. Such a tough concept, right? Gender. A lot of us don't understand it, at least, you know, in our generation, my generation. But it's happening, and so there has to be a way for our kids to get through the changes that they're living. And the divisive concepts law is a way of trying to say, no, we can't let our kids know about racism. We can't let them know about what's happening in society. So I think that it's the wrong way to go. You know, there's a group started up to create bounties for anybody who could get a teacher fired. We don't want that kind of thing. So hopefully the court rules against that. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Santonastasso.
Thank you. Yeah, so this kind of divisive concept law thing that got passed, this is the kind of thing that happens when you have government run things. The problem is the public school is a one-size-fits-all solution for every child. At least that's the idea. And then what happens is people want certain things done. They want kids taught one way, or some people want it taught the other way. So what happens is we have to settle it at the levels of government, right? Instead, just like most things, we should go ahead and send our kids to schools that align with our values. You know, instead of having a one-size-fits-all, we should have charter schools and private schools and homeschooling where parents can select, you know, what fits their values best. And then we'll have, what's very important is diversity of thought. Because when we got problems coming up, you know, the world's changing, and we can't have everyone thinking the same thing. Everyone going to the same school, being taught the same curriculum, thinking the same thing. It's like if you were only exposed to one disease and then another disease came in, you wouldn't know how to deal with it. Your body wouldn't know how to deal with it. We need our population to be well diverse in thought and learn from different ideologies and different ways of thinking and being to have a robust society.
Thank you. Jeffrey Dickler.
Well, divisive concepts, there you go. It seems I heard that from Adolf Hitler. Divisive concepts, it's like saying, oh, you can't think differently. We don't want that, and if you do that, we're going to throw you under the bus. Well, the fact of the matter is, back up the bus for a minute. Our country was built and thrived on solid public education. That's what brought us together. It makes the melting pot of our culture. So if we're going to go in there, we're going to say, well, you can't teach this and you can't teach that. We're running people out, and suddenly you have this Tower of Babel. And we all know how that worked out. Not real well. We need unified education. You want different education, you want to pay for it, fine, go pay for it. But the fact of the matter is, I got my non-secular education at home, thank you very much, and it did fine. And most of the people in this room got the same thing, and they're very happy with it. This is just a false flag to divide us up by the people who are collecting the money, folks. Follow the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Qualey.
Thank you. I voted for the Divisive Concepts Bill. It was part of House Bill 2 in 2021, called the Trailer Bill. The description I just heard of the Divisive Concept bills doesn't ring a bell with me on what I voted for. What I voted for was a bill that empowered parents to take action if their school district was teaching concepts that asserted that children were somehow bad or evil because of their ancestry, because of some legacy of past misdeeds in this country. They occurred in this country like every other country in the world, every other culture that's ever existed. And it has nothing to do with not teaching history or not teaching racism. History is history. It's to be taught. But if you're teaching children sitting in that classroom that somehow, because of actions of their ancestors or people who look like their ancestors, makes them bad or somehow privileged, that's wrong. And that's what that bill is intended to prevent. And it gives parents the power to do it. And ultimately, the responsibility and the right to determine the education of a child belongs naturally to the parents. And we need to protect the right of the parents to direct the education of their children. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah Bissix.
I spent a lot of time talking and thinking about this. I have young kids, and I understand what it's like to want to protect them and want to keep them safe. And I think that that's probably what's behind bills like these, is a fundamental drive to want to protect and keep your child safe. I just don't think that this is the way to do it. I think, I've been in book groups and dealing with the painful history of this country, and it's hard and it's uncomfortable. And a lot of us have never had to deal with that before. And I understand the instinct to want to shut it down. But, as an educator, I know how hard the job is. And we have a problem getting and retaining teachers. And I just don't think that this is a place the state belongs in legislating what teachers can and can't do and teach. I don't think it makes for a positive learning environment for anyone. And, I think that we will benefit from being able to tolerate the discomfort of understanding about this country's history and being able to move through it. I think that's the only way through, honestly.
Thank you. John Hunt.
So, ironically, someone actually took my answer. But I was not in favor of this law and this bill. And the simple reason is, over the years, I've always voted against any time the legislature had this great idea that we were going to mandate onto school districts. I do believe that school districts are local, and let the locals figure that out, and it's their problem. And I've always voted against these kind of mandates from the state down to local government. Having said that, my answer would have been what Matt is saying, is that ironically we have this other debate about vouchers and school choice. Well, yes, I did graduate from Boston University with a secondary school teacher's certificate, and I did teach for a year. So I understand what it's like to be a teacher. I understand what goes on in the schools. And I understand that to try to tell a teacher how to teach something and try to make sure they say it in a nice way or not to make someone feel bad, I don't know how they're going to do that. Every teacher has his own style. But more importantly is that what we really want is to make people feel like that if you're not happy with that school, if you're not happy with those teachers, you should have the right to go to another school. That's what we're empowering people to do, is to make the choice. I'm pro-choice on everything. And yes, I am pro-choice when it comes to education. And if you want, instead of coming to the legislature and have us pass these kind of things, get a voucher.
Thank you. All right, we have time for one more question. This will start with Matt Santonastasto. If you had time, if you had at the end of your time in public office one legacy, a policy, or a change, what would you want it to be?
Well, I guess I would have to think about, but one thing that we're working on right now that's pretty exciting, one way we can kind of rein in the federal government with the state government is defend the guard. This is an idea that is spreading through different states, and basically the federal government's not supposed to deploy troops into combat unless they have a declaration of war from Congress. But unfortunately, the federal government has been doing that routinely for a long time without getting this declaration of war. And defend the guard would actually prohibit, this is legislation idea, it would actually prohibit the federal government from deploying National Guard troops into combat unless the federal government did get a declaration of war from Congress. This would be, a great way to stop, the overseas wasteful, wars, this empire that nobody asked for, but we got it. National Guard troops, just New Hampshire doing it wouldn't be enough, but if a lot of states do this, the federal government would have to actually go to Congress and make their case on why they want to go to war, because National Guard troops are just cheaper than federal troops. We don't pay to keep them in barracks, and there's just lots of reasons why they use the National Guard for these wars. So that's Defend the Guard. DefendTheGuard.us is the URL that describes it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Dickler.
I would want to see our public schools fully funded from pre-K all the way through four-year college. We have been lacking in that for going on 30 years. We've had lawsuits about it, and they keep ignoring it. We need to fund the public schools fully so that we have a well-educated workforce that will bring companies here because they can find well-qualified workers and they find a workable environment for their companies. That's really it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Qualey.
Thank you. When I was elected 2 years ago, I was assigned to the House Election Law Committee. And if I can leave any lasting result from my time on that committee, which hopefully will continue, it would be to help preserve and even restore the trust people have in our election system. In the Declaration of Independence, one of the self-evident truths they listed was that governments are instituted among people to secure our rights, with the just powers of those governments derived from the consent of the governed. How we determine how we ensure that our governments at local, state, and federal level have the consent of the governed is through elections. So the validity of our elections is the foundation of the legitimacy of our entire way of governing ourselves. And I've had a chance to think in the last 2 years what that means. It means that the election system has to meet some requirements to do that. And I see the requirements really at the top level, ensuring that we have one person, one vote. Secondly, we have secret ballots. And thirdly, that our system is transparent so that anybody can understand it easily. And I'm running out of time because I could go on for another half an hour or an hour. But that's the legacy I'd like to leave, preserving and even enhancing the trust people have in the foundation of our governments. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah Bissix.
I got into this because democracy requires participation. And I really never imagined myself a politician until I realized that politics is really about people. And I'd like to think that in my term, a goal I have is to increase our engagement within the community, both in terms of what's happening on the state. I've already been writing a biweekly communication out to people. I'd like to continue to do that so that people know what decisions are that are affecting our lives. I think we need to be talking to one another across difference and see where we can come together. And I'd like to see long-term decisions when we are keeping front in mind what is the long-term viability of this movement and how does it look out for the future of our children. And I think the other thing that I'd really like to do is redefine the way that we're looking at these parties. I've been out talking to people, and you know, I'm a Democrat, but I'm pretty conservative, right? I'm pretty conservative with my resources, both natural resources and fiscal resources. And I think that there are incongruities in the leadership that we have right now that argue that we have strong fiscal policy, but then have a voucher program that went 400% over budget, right? So I like to be a common sense Democrat who works across the aisle and increases community participation. Thank you.
Thank you. John Hunt.
Okay, I get to pick up where I left off. I am the godfather of charter schools in New Hampshire. I sponsor the original legislation. I truly believe, and I read this book from the Brookings Institute, and which was the concept is if we took each public school and allowed the teachers to run the school, allowed the school to have its own pedagogy, its own mission, then maybe we would spend more money on education if we knew that every child chose the school they went to. They're there because they want to be there, not because this is the one they were told they have to go to. We need to empower parents to get involved with the children's education. They don't feel that way. They feel disconnected. They feel the school is some kind of institution is telling them what to do. We need to change the entire model, our educational model, and make each individual school be its own school.
Thank you. John McCarthy.
Okay, thank you. If I were fortunate enough to be elected as a state representative and whatever time I had a chance to spend, what would I want my legacy to be? I would like to see us make our tax system fair. I'd like to see us fund our school system. And to me, that doesn't necessarily mean 100% funded, but we're way behind here in New Hampshire, I think. Not in our educational results. I think we're doing pretty good on that. But the burden on our small communities, especially on Jaffrey and Rindge, is pretty tough. And I say especially, I mean particularly. There are cities and towns in this state that are much worse off. So I'd like to see us improve our public school funding system. And as far as the change in our schools, it's amazing, it's immense. You know, homeschooling is not what it was 10 years ago. With the resources, the educational resources that are out there, kids have access to all sorts of things, programs they can take online, some of the acceleration caused by the pandemic. There are many choices that our kids have nowadays. One thing, though, I'm not in favor of is funding with vouchers religious education.
And that's time.
I went to a religious school, and my parents paid for it with the help of the religion, with the help of the church. So that's the way I'd like to see that go. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll wrap up tonight's Rindge Candidates Forum by offering each candidate 1 minute for a closing statement. And we'll start with Jeff Dickler.
Two years ago, a Democratic-controlled legislature passed a whole raft of bills designed to help New Hampshire voters. Among them were bills to improve our energy resilience, public schools, voting rights. Our governor vetoed every single one. Once Republicans were in charge, they passed and enacted bills to hurt women, divide us up by damaging public education, and continue to shift the cost of everything down to us as property taxes, while giving breaks to fossil fuel companies, rich people, and big companies. It's easy to sell a cut in taxes. It makes you look like a hero now. The long-term consequences of that can be devastating and somebody else's problem. I don't have to worry about that. Remember, blaming doesn't fix anything, and that's what we hear a lot of. Blaming doesn't fix anything. We need to roll up our sleeves, make things better for all New Hampshireites, and please vote. So please support my candidacy and other Democrats on your ballot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim Quayle.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here tonight and being interested in what we have to say. And thank you to the sponsors of this event for inviting me and the rest of us. And I do appreciate everyone who stepped up to run for these offices. It pays $100 a year before taxes. And we actually had a bill last year that attempted to remove that constitutional limitation, and I voted against it because I like the fact that everybody in that legislature, whether I agree with everyone in the House and the Senate, whether I agree with them or not, is there trying to serve their community. And it is a job. There's a lot of meetings, and by the way, I have not missed a single meeting I was obligated to go to, whether it's a House session or a committee meeting or a county delegation meeting or a county executive committee meeting. I'm doing the job and working to represent the interest and values of our area as best I know how. And I read every email I get, by the way. Even if I don't agree with it, I always learn something from it. So please let me know what you think in person or by email. I read all of them. So I hope you'll vote for me again so I'll have the opportunity to keep working at this job in representing our interests and values. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah Bissix.
This has been so great. I'm so happy to be here and be listening to these conversations and the responses. I want to keep this going. I love questions. I want to say we need leaders who can meet this moment with courage and conviction, that we can no longer continue with business as usual. I will stand up for this belief and maintain my priority in staying present in this community through conflict. I believe there is an opportunity to act, but the moment is calling. Today I'm here to ask you what courage and action this moment is calling to you. Because tonight is not really about these candidates up here. It's about how we together imagine and work for your future and the future of your children. And I have a few minutes left, and I just want to share with you, I know I'm new, but I made a legislative discernment framework, and I'm going to share these questions. Are the perspectives of those most affected adequately represented? Are the resources used wisely with a goal of long-term sustainability? Does this honor an individual's ability to know what is best for themselves? Does this serve to connect and support the community? Is this the best next step towards building a resilient future? Those are the questions I'm asking myself, and you should be asking yourself too, and engaging with us and this political process. So thank you so much.
Thank you. John Hunt.
Thank you very much, and I very much appreciate this opportunity. I also appreciate the fact that Rindge citizens have sent me to Concord so many times, and I hope they will do it again. I love my job. I love what I do at Concord. I feel that I have a lot of camaraderie and support, and I can tell you there's no other chairman that has as much support from the minority as I do. And I get that because I work with people. I'm a friendly person. I'm not spiteful, and I certainly don't taunt people. I work with them, and we get things done. And I feel like I can still do that and still serve my constituents here in Rindge and serve them well by giving them the things that they need, by calling me up. My phone number is on the webpage, the state webpage. That's my cell number. I don't screen calls. I take calls. I read all my emails, and I respond because I'm here to serve my citizens of Rindge.
Thank you. John McCarthy.
So thank you to everybody who came out tonight. Thank you to everybody who's listening on live stream, and to the League of Women Voters, and to Franklin Pierce for doing this. This is great. I'm running because I have concerns, and I know I'm not alone, about our democracy. It's been a crazy couple of years, a lot of denial of a lot of things. Denial of who won the election. Denial sometimes of whether or not forthcoming election results are going to be respected. And, you know, it's hard to know how much to fear these things, but I think we need to take them seriously. My goal, since I started this, was to say I wanted to bring people together and to listen to people. And I know that talk is cheap, right? You can say that, but that doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do. But I'm trying, and I try to remind myself all the time that listening is sometimes harder, but more important than talking. And so my goal is to keep the conversation going, no matter what else happens. I care about this country. I think we've been a leader to the world. Not always, but I think we can be again, and we need to be. So, thank you.
Thank you. Matt Santonastasso.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to this thing tonight and allowing me to participate in why I'm running for state rep again. So yeah, the 21st century, we've got some unique problems coming up that we haven't run into before. But you think about the 20th century, and there was some pretty amazing problems then too. You know, it's always kind of amazing just thinking about what humans have endured and lived through and figured out. So the thing about these problems is, you know, they're kind of scary. You know, prices are going up. You know, there might be a problem with the dollar hyperinflating or something like this down the road. So, I mean, it's scary. And, you know, sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is to look for government and ask the government how they can solve it. But the government's just going to do a bad job, you know. I mean, you have just less people working on the problem. You know, the government comes up with a solution, and then that's the one size fits all, you know. Now you have to do it this way. But when you leave it up, when you leave liberty up to the people to figure things out, you know, we can try multiple solutions. That's why market solutions work, because lots of people are trying different things. And, you know, the one that works out the best is the one that gets done, you know, just like natural selection. You know, you have lots of different, trying lots of different stuff, and then the best one wins. So I think we should just look to the market for solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Franklin Pierce University and the Marlin Fitzwater Center for Communication, the Peterborough Plus Chamber of the League of Women Voters, New Hampshire, and the Monadnock Ledger Transcript, I thank the candidates for sharing their voices. We also thank the audiences both here on the campus of Franklin Pierce University and on the live stream for taking time to talk to us. Remember, please vote on November 8th. Our democracy depends on you. Thank you very much.